Hi, welcome to the Also Called podcast, where we're asking hard questions about our place in this hectic world.
Join us as we dig into the truth about who God is, possibly discovering that we are also called. Welcome to the Also Called podcast. In today's episode, we'll meet the women from our recently released book, The Other Disciples. Today, we're diving into the life-changing story of the woman with the issue of blood, the third disciple from the book. Join us as we discover who she was, her remarkable experience, and all that she received from a traveling prophet who turned out to do and be so much more than a healer. We'll explore the lessons from her life, ministry, and deep love for Jesus, and consider what they offer us today. So get ready for the journey of the heart of a faithful follower. Let's get started. I'm Mia, and I'm learning who I am and who I am in Christ at 50 after following him for 30 years. So here's hope for y'all who are on the same struggle bus.
I'm Andrea, and I am learning that sometimes God is just waiting for us to reach out. He wants to give us good things.
Today, we have Stephanie Williams with us, and she's going to introduce us to Daughter. She is who we're referring to as the woman with the issue of blood. So, Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, like Mia said, my name is Stephanie Williams. I am a third culture kid. I grew up with an American dad and a German mom and in a military family, traveling all over the world and having to adjust and adapt to all kinds of life situations and all different ways of living. And then I came to know the Lord when I was in college, and that just changed everything completely for me. I went from following one faith to following Jesus, and my life has never been the same.
So, Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about who we're talking about today?
So, Daughter is one of my favorite biblical characters because she is so unknown. She's only known by the term daughter, and she has a very chronic issue, one that I think we can all relate to because we all have stuff that never goes away. You can find her in Matthew 9:20 through 22, Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34, and again in Luke chapter 8, verses 43 through 48.
I love that you said that you changed from faith to following Jesus. I think a lot of us can get stuck in a certain belief or things like that. But there's a definite difference when you're just following Jesus. So what drew you to being a part of the other disciples?
Well, it's kind of a random thing. Mia and I were talking on the phone, and I was lamenting about my own journey with some medical issues. And then Mia was sharing with me what she was doing and this idea that she had about this project. And it just kind of grew from there. It was very organic. It's growth that started from a friendship and two women who came together to just talk about life and commiserate about how hard life can be sometimes, to, hey, why don't we share our struggles and our journey and our hope through our own stories, but then always point people back to the Lord. And that's the beauty of Daughter, is that we can point her back to the Lord and to her journey with Jesus. She was very blessed in that she got to be face to face with him. I long for that day. That's how it started, just through an organic friendship with a beloved daughter.
I'm so thankful that you did. And it's been so much fun to get to work with you on a deeper level. So what specifically drew you to Daughter in particular?
I think really it was, again, the journey of her battling with this chronic, very long 12-year battle with her health issues, and me going through my own journey of a chronic long-term illness that has yet to be identified, and have all kinds of medical professionals. The list of doctors is ridiculous, and they've yet to be able to tell me, here's what you've got, this is what's going on, and here's how we're moving forward and treating it. And so when in scripture it talks about her expending her life's resources and never getting any answers, my heart just broke for her, because it's just so much a part of my own personal journey.
I can relate to that too. I think that's something that the three of us have in common, is this journey of trying to figure out what is going on and not being able to get answers and just getting more frustrated, and learning that the things that we put in our body and our emotional health and regulating our nervous system, it's all connected because God is wonderful and he designed us that way. What did you enjoy most about the actual writing?
Well, I'll be honest, the writing itself was a challenge for me because I'm not a writer. And so me and I, that's where we collaborated a lot on that. And so I did a lot of the talking because that's my forte. And Mia took my thoughts and kind of compiled it and put it together, and we were able to collaborate on it. And so I think for me, that was kind of the highlight of it, was because I love collaboration and I love teamwork. And so she was able to take her strengths in the written language, and I was able to take mine in the verbal, and we brought it together, trusted God to bring together this beautiful chapter.
I'm with you. Collaboration's my favorite thing in the whole world. So it's so much fun to work with people and learn, like I said, a whole new level of your friendship, just because you you have to figure it out what you're good at and what you're bringing and what I'm bringing. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So thank you for joining the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me, because I really didn't feel like I had anything to offer. I was like, I don't know, but
Stephanie, I think we have so much in common because it sounds like exactly like the conversations that Mia and I had during this whole thing with me. She actually wrote the fictional piece for my chapter as well. So, Mia, tell us about the fictional story for this chapter.
Yeah, so Stephanie and I went back and forth about which fictional story to go with. And so we ended up going with a fictional story about a girl who's in the foster care system and about to age out, feeling very hopeless. And I think we went with that because women, or people in general who are in health situations, can really at some points of their journey feel hopeless. And so we just went through with that story a situation of a girl not wanting to open up one more time and be disappointed one more time. And I think even though it didn't address her health, it still addresses the whole idea of just opening yourself up one more time. Maybe this is the time something good will happen, or I'll be cured, or I'll find a home, or I'll fit in somewhere. So it was a hard one to write as far as like our hearts, because again, in situations when all things seem hopeless, scraping up that faith, scraping up that hope one more time.
I get that, the hopelessness in different circumstances. So I definitely see how the fictional story conveys those same elements, the desperation, really, and just sometimes you just have to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going.
I'm watching our life journey, and our granddaughter lives with us, and she's medically fragile, and she has her own life journey in the medical world. And I'm watching her go through this. And I'm watching her walk those lines of uncertainty. Right now, she has a G tube that she feeds through, and 3 times now we've tried to do a hunger-based wean, and it's failed. Well, we saw the doctor the other day, and for the first time in probably 10 years, he gave us hope that she might get to have the G tube taken out in January. And so we're super, super hopeful. I watch her go through, do you go back one more time? Do you ask one more time? Do you enter into it one more time? The what's wrong with me? Those kinds of things. I walk through it with her. Yeah. And it's hard.
And I love that she's so resilient that she keeps going back.
Is braver than I ever thought of being.
So Stephanie, so let's talk a little bit about the cultural historical context. What was the world that daughter was living in?
Yeah, so, early Israel, Jesus was in the midst of his ministry, traveling through Israel. The word was getting out. Back up 12 years before that, he wasn't known yet. She was young. She was coming into her womanhood, which should have been a good thing, but then it didn't do its normal cycle of the way it should be. And so we speculate. We don't know for sure exactly what her issue was, but the times that she was living in were very archaic, for lack of a better word. You really have to take yourself out of Western civilization and Western culture and what we know, and really transport back into the Eastern world. And there were no hospitals, there were no doctors, they didn't really know how things worked. It was just very simplistic in so many ways. So starting her journey as a woman, we believe that the bleeding, the hemorrhaging issue had to do with her menstrual cycle. It could have been other things, but that seems to be the most logical. And in the Jewish culture, if you had any type of bleeding disorder, any type of skin issue, anything medical, it rendered you culturally and spiritually unclean during the time that you were going through it. And it wasn't until you were deemed clean again, either through the hemorrhaging stopping or the illness being cured or whatever it was, that being proven, that you were then allowed to re-enter into the culture and into the society and go back to synagogue, to their church. And until that was proven, you were an outcast. And anybody who came in contact with you ran the risk of being shunned also by society. And so your family, you really were just cut off from everybody that you knew. And it was proven that it had ceased or that it continued by going the priests, which were all men. It was very male dominated society back then. The priests were men, physicians were men, everybody was men. The only women you might encounter were the midwives that were delivering the babies. And it's possible that it could have been a midwife that would go in with the priest and to prove that everything had stopped and the woman was clean again, her cycle had stopped, and she was able to then go through the cleansing ritual that what needed to happen to enter back into society. But there was definite almost shame that came with it, which is really sad, because being a mother and childbirth and from our Western culture, it's a beautiful thing. It's something that we celebrate. And it was celebrated back then too, but it was the month to month stuff that was shameful and rendered you unable to be with the rest of your population and the rest of your people.
I can't imagine just the 12 years of that is just like blows my mind. I had a hysterectomy when I was 33, and I had been just the physical toll that took on me. That was hard, but I was dealing with it for a couple of years. I can't imagine 12 years.
Totally. And I think the other part of it is we don't really grasp the shame of that. And when we were doing the research for that chapter, the laws on cleanliness come from Leviticus 15:19 through 33, and then 12:2 through 8. And looking at the commentary of why did they have those cleanliness laws, and it's because of how unsanitary a lot of things were. And so it was a big deal. If someone was sick, it would spread so rampantly through the congregation or through the camp or through, whatever era and time it was, through the people, through the town. So God set that apart so that it was a protection for the community. But in time, it became a lot more than that. It became almost a punishment, and it became an ostracizing, like you talked about. So then it carried guilt and shame with it, where before it was more for protection, but it became both protection and ostracization. So I think it's real important for us to address, because I don't think us as Westerners really understand it. But I think in terms of COVID and what we saw during that year and subsequent times for that, of the shaming of someone who was sick, or shaming of someone who chose to not participate in protecting their community when they chose not to be home when they were sick and quarantined. So I think it's just a really difficult concept for us to really grasp what she was going through.
And then you also have to consider, if she wasn't allowed, in the community, how did she care for herself? How did she survive? Honestly, I mean, just from a physical standpoint, but from the psychological and emotional and mental, being so cut off from everyone, I can't even imagine. Are there some other issues that Stephanie, that you would like to cover that she dealt with?
As with many things, Satan can take something that God means for good and completely distort it and blow it out of proportion to then become something negative and bad. And back then, if you had something, especially like a bleeding issue, the mentality was, well, if it hasn't stopped, what have you done wrong? What sin have you done? What's occurred in your life? What are you not confessing? What are you not getting out? And so it became, you were being accused of stuff that you were like, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything wrong. And so there was, I mean, they even say it. There's the story of the young man who was blind. Yes. And they were blaming it on his parents' sin that, well, what did you do? Well, why aren't you getting better? And that was just kind of the mentality of the culture, is that there had to be something more wrong with you. It couldn't just be a biological thing. And then to the point where nobody was going to get near enough to you to listen anyway. It's not like we had telephones or technology that, you could still be in community, like what you were mentioning with COVID. COVID was terrible during the pandemic, but we at least had technology that we could stay in community with. I remember when I was younger, oh gosh, I was in early 20s, I think. I worked at a child development center, and everything that they got, I got. Because they quarantined them, the little ones, from the population to keep it from spreading, just like what God did with the Israelites. We're going to quarantine you. We're going to set you apart. But they quarantined those little precious babies in my office until their mom and daddy could come. And so you name it, I got it. The only thing I never got was the lice. I never got lice, but I got scabies and Fifth's disease and scarlet fever and all of that kind of stuff. And so I got scarlet fever and Fifth's disease, which are early childhood diseases. And you literally are quarantined. And I remember my mom showing up to my apartment, and God love her sweet little German self. She had on a bandana around her neck and yellow gloves, dishwashing gloves up to her elbows, and her pants tucked in her boots. And, she was like covered head to toe, short of a hazmat suit. And she put a basket of food in front of my door, and she knocked on the door, and then she backed way up into it and right in front of my neighbor across the hall. And I stayed back, and thank you, Mom. I love you. And thank you for the food, because I couldn't go out. I didn't have any food in the house. I was running out. So everything that Andrea just said, how do you care for yourself on a practical level? Unless you have people, and that's the kind of the silver lining, unless you have people in your life that love you enough to step out just a little bit. I mean, like right on the line of what's spiritually allowed, what's culturally allowed, enough to kind of push you a basket of food and then run the other direction, And again, another one of those touch points that my heart just broke for daughter, because how do you care for yourself if you don't have anybody to care for you in just those simple, practical ways?
Exactly. And there wasn't anything. I mean, she had, like it said in the word, she exhausted her resources. I don't know if that meant just financially, but it might have exhausted the family members and friends who were willing to help her. It might have been,
Relational.
yes, exactly. So much
Mhm.
more than that. So, Stephanie, can we talk through what Jesus did for daughter, or the woman with the issue of blood at this point in the story?
He brought hope. Somehow, if you think about it, it's really interesting that she even heard about it. If she was that ostracized and that kind of put out of community, but that's the beauty of Jesus and his story, is that even when you're ostracized out, even the rocks will cry out, right? God's going to make himself known to those that need him. And so she heard about him, and she heard, hey, he's coming through my neck of the woods. He's coming through my neighborhood. And then she had a decision to make. Am I going to risk it? Am I going to risk really being shunned by my community and because he's just passing through? And I don't know. I mean, it's just, am I going to step out in faith and risk this? And so he really did. He brought hope to her. He brought possibilities, and he brought, I would think, in her brain somewhere, she she knew the Lord. She had to know something. And again, how did that happen if she started her cycle early on in her life, 12-ish, when every little girl does, and now it's 12 years later, and she hasn't been to synagogue? Who's telling her stuff? How's she learning any of this? How does she learn about God? I mean, in the first 12 years, I'm sure she went through all of the Sabbath and all of the holidays and all of that. So some of that information was there. But again, how did then she learn about Jesus and the hope that he brings and the healing that he brings? And so, yeah, to me, that's the biggest thing that Jesus brought in to all of it, is just coming through the streets of her town and bringing her hope.
So, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the story, can you kind of summarize the story on how we get her name, daughter, and exactly how Jesus brought that hope to her?
So she snuck out, basically. She snuck out and she snuck through the crowd. And she knew. So in the Jewish tradition, they had very specific articles of clothing that they wore. Part of the clothing that Jesus would have had on was something called talid, and the corners of his robe had knots on them. And the belief was that in touching, that there was power of healing and connection, just the hem of his garment. And that's what she went into this with. She came out of hiding, came out of isolation, wandered through the crowds, which there were hordes of people. So she was touching people. I can only imagine that maybe she had covered herself to disguise herself in some way. I don't know that for sure, but I'm guessing, because otherwise I think people would have just like parting of the Red Seas and, she's got the plague and she's in the middle of us. So her hope was, if I can just get close enough to him and touch the corner of his garment, then maybe I have hope to be healed. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly what she did. Did she graze it? Did she grasp it? Did she touch it? We don't know. Personally, I think she just soft graze, but it was enough that Jesus went, oh, hold on, because he felt the power go out of him. Hold on, who just touched me? To when his disciples, that were his posse that was traveling with him, his disciples all said, what do you mean, who's touched you? There's people all around you. That's how we know this was a very crowded marketplace. There were people everywhere. What do you mean, who just touched you? You probably were just touched by a horde of people. And he said, no, somebody just touched me. And then he knew he's God. He's fully human and he's fully God. And so then he turned around, and of course, then she confessed. That is when we hear him say, daughter. And when she's given a name for the first time in her whole story, and she's given the name because she stepped out in faith. She stepped out bravely against all odds, and she trusted, and she had hope. And in that fast, in that instant, daughter, you have been healed.
The beautiful thing is, we don't know if she was Jewish or not Jewish. So if she was, she might have known Malachi 4:2, that talks about the sons of righteousness with healing in his wings, because the talit was like a shawl that had the tassels. And so did she grab on to that prophetic understanding of what the Messiah was going to be able to do? Or maybe she wasn't Jewish. We don't 100% know, but we think that she was, because he referenced her as daughter. Because if you want to kind of go back and argue, there's that he said, I'm not here for people outside of the family or for the Gentiles. I'm here for the Jews, even though he did do some healing for another person who wasn't Jewish. And the second thing that was so beautiful that Stephanie and I talk about in the chapter is the fact that he didn't just restore her health, he restored her identity. He restored her spiritually, he has restored her physically, he restored her mentally. And that's what's so beautiful about this healing, is that publicly he calls her out. And you could read it from the perspective that he wasn't calling her out to reprimand her. He was calling her out to stay right now. You are reestablished as a daughter of Israel. You're reestablished as a daughter in your family and the daughter of God. So I think what he did for her was so much more than a healing.
Yeah, and to do it publicly, but also her point of boldness or desperation or both for her to be able to step out and do that and to say, yeah, it was me. I did it.
I know. I mean, can you imagine? I try to put, when I'm reading through scripture, I try to put myself, as hard as it is, into the story. I just don't even know that I would have that kind of courage, but I might, because she was desperate. I mean, desperate beyond measure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Also Called provides a space for honest conversations about the truth of who God is, who we are, and the relationships He wants us to have with Him, each other, the church, and ourselves. This episode was just the start of the conversation. Be sure to check the show notes for extra resources to go further. You can also find our social media sites to join the discussion. Don't miss our next chat by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also Called is part of Bible and Pop Culture, a crowd-funded nonprofit that allows us to provide our content to start great conversations for free. You can help us keep doing this by checking out BibleandPopCulture.com or AlsoCalled.org's Donate Subscribe buttons with a one-time gift, supporting us monthly, or sharing us with someone who might like the conversation. Thank you for being a part, and see you next conversation.